We live in a world where violence is inevitable. It's been proven over and over again that it is impossible to have a pacifistic world. Yet, that hasn't stopped us from believing in the possibility of solving every problem peacefully. In every aspect of our lives, these two worldviews oppose each other. For instance, sociopolitically, we have people who believe we have a faulty social structure and they fight to correct this social structure using non-violence. On the other hand, we have people who believe in the same idea of a faulty social structure, but they believe we need violence to correct it. And when you look at international relations, we have the those who believe we can just negotiate and negotiate until we arrive at a middle ground or a favorable situation. And on the other hand, we have the ox who think, nah, just go for it and sort it out once and for all. But besides these two instances I just used, which actually affect us and yet do not feel personal because we don't make the decisions, there's a closer lens to look at it. Every day we wake up and we find ourselves in situations, most times the most mundane situations. And in dealing with them, we face this question: are you a dove or a hawk? Sometimes the situation can be as mundane as this.
Good.
Hey, Ray, ever played Secret Santa before?
Nah, mate.
Oh, mate, you are in for the time of your life.
I just finished watching Mr. Inbetween, and I think it explores the idea of violence in an interesting way. Mr. Inbetween is an Australian television show about a shoesmith, a hired assassin and a fixer who tries to juggle between his violent profession and his peaceful personal life. And trust me, I know how weird it sounds that I'm exploring something as complex as violence by using a show where the protagonist is a hired assassin. But it works. It works because Ray Smith isn't just a criminal who has this secret life where they do violent things to people, but at the same time will be one of the sweetest people in their other life, their personal life. That's not why it works. It works because Ray Smith is real. He believes in the principle of violence. And as crazy as it sounds, not every criminal actually believes in the principle of violence. We've seen astute criminals who would often consider violence as a last resort, even in their violent lives, like Mike Emantot in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And most of them can't even be described as being ideological about violence. They're just, messed up people who have never actually self-reflected and see violence as a way to evade the socio-economic realities of the world. But not Ray Smith. He believes in the necessity of violence, not as a last resort, but as a weapon that can be used in the very early stage of disputes, even in his personal life. He believes in the simplicity of it. He believes in the reciprocity of it and the ethics of it. He believes there is good violence.
I mean, without wanting to state the obvious, can you see how violence is perhaps not the best way for you to resolve your disputes?
No, I think it generally is. But, just don't do it in front of your girlfriend,
What's great about it? I mean, it doesn't seem to have worked for you this time.
Yeah, well, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't,
Can you give me one example of violence ever working?
World War II?
World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into what makes Ray a symbol of this exploration of violence, we have to acknowledge what influenced his intimacy with violence. Ray grew up being bullied in school, and at some point in his childhood, his father came back from war and became an alcoholic, and eventually started abusing him. Ray's response to this was a feeling of weakness. Then he questioned his own weakness, and his conclusion was commonsensical, really.
It's always better to give than receive.
Is it?
Fuck yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, you gotta fight back, Otherwise
Otherwise what?
people will walk all over you,
That idea of violence being a necessary weapon to repel bullies evolved into what eventually became the backbone of Ray's principle, which is that violence isn't just a weapon that repels bullies, it is the basis of respect. People don't have to like you, But if they know you can dish out violence, they will respect you. Ray believes the idea of violence he developed as a child is just an intrinsic part of what eventually became the backbone of his principle. And just like we operate on our principles every day by default, Ray operates on his principle every day by default. And this is what makes Ray different. He's written in a way that he can't seem to separate how he uses violence in his criminal life from how he uses it in his personal life. I mean, the scale is always different, obviously. But for Ray, violence is the truth. And how do you separate something so true to you from one aspect of your life? So this inability is not a failure for Ray, it is a feature. And every time Ray faces a situation that challenges this principle, we learn something interesting about his character and this principle. For instance, when Ray's child complained about the bullying in school, Ray tried to deal with it peacefully because it involved his child and a relationship with another child. But instead of doing what a normal parent would have done and just raise a complaint with the school, he confronted his child's parents. And when the child's parents wasn't welcoming, he just got another child to threaten that child so she would stop bullying his child. Some episodes later, we learned that even choosing to deal with that issue peacefully in the first instance was a choice he made reluctantly because when he has to deal with another issue involving his child, he just straight up threatened the other child.
Okay, sure. So every now and then, violence is necessary as a last resort. But for you, with your girlfriend's brother, I mean, would you call that an example of violence working?
Yeah, look, I shouldn't have done what I did. You know, I'm not making excuses, but I don't think you can say that all violence is bad. I mean, I think there's good violence and bad violence.
What's good violence?
World War II.
Thanks, Vince.
What makes Mr. Inbetween so good is that it is not just developing characters and forging plots. At the same time, it is actually exploring a theme. But because of the conventional delivery, you might miss that. Actually, I think Mr. Inbetween is a philosophical statement about violence. Normally, when you see a show whose plot is about a criminal trying to juggle their personal life with their professional life, you expect certain things, like how relationships intersect between those two lives, or how one dynamic from their personal life intersects with another dynamic from their professional life, and then spirals out of control. Mr. Inbetween, for a large part, is devoid of those plot lines. And that's because it's not actually a show about a violent criminal trying to juggle their professional life with their personal life. It's a show that explores violence. Even in Ray's professional life, where it's all about violence, you expect normalcy, but you don't get it because Ray is a principled violence. You see that there are ethics guiding his nature of violence, even in a violent world. There's the cliche one of trying as much as possible not to hurt people who are not in the game. There's the one about not getting involved in situations that involve women and children, and the one about staying loyal to people he has established relationships with. But most importantly, Ray truly recognizes that it is never personal in that world, except in cases where clearly drawn lines are crossed. In the episode, Your Mom's Got a Strong Box, we see how Ray allowed the assassin to live after foiling the assassination and killing the crew that hired the assassin. From Ray's perspective, the assassin was just doing his job, like he had done for years. Having these clear ethics that guide the violent acts he commits in his professional world actually gives him an edge. He leaves no room for doubt as to who he is, and it actually that allows his reputation to precede him. It also makes him effective. One of my favorite scenes actually showed how Ray's clarity with violence made him more dangerous and effective in his world. In that scene, Ray and his friend were set up and robbed by a gang in a gun deal, but Ray was able to kidnap the guy who set them up. So he called the gang and told them to bring back the gun and some cash to get their man. And this was how the exchange went down.
You all right?
Cash? How lad first, eh? See you around, eh?
What makes this scene one of my favorites and a very important scene in the series is not just that it shows how decisive Ray is, but also because it makes an interesting point about violence. The guy had the money, he came with the cash, but he just wouldn't honor the exchange. He probably thought they would get to anything with violence, and then he would have to drop it or fight back or whatever. But he just put out the gun and started shooting straight up. That level of decisiveness is only possessed by people with a certain level of clarity. And I find it admirable. I think whether you're a dove or a hawk, the ultimate aim is to have clarity in your belief. Clarity in belief is something everyone seeks, and many people just never get. Action A contradicts action B, which contradicts action C, and it becomes impossible to be as decisive as Ray is. So, whether you approve of Ray's principle or not, you have to respect the clarity of his perception of violence and peace, and you have to admire the kind of person it leads him to be in his professional world.
Do you know who that was?
Some fucking clown.
That was the magician.
Yeah, that's how I'm starting my year, admiring violence. And if you haven't seen Mr. Inbetween, I promise you, it's one of the underrated gems out there. My name is Peter, and I hope you have an amazing year. Peace. Ironic.